Hi, everybody. Another Thursday evening. Just want to thank everybody for those of you who did sending a few questions. It's always helpful when other people send in questions, so I can maybe try and help in various different ways. And another not so silly thing, but just peripheral thing. I want to thank everybody here who has sent us Christmas cards. Really appreciate that. And just wanted to make sure that you understood that was we both appreciate it very much. So let's take a look at some of these questions. The first one is from Doris Flooding from around Toronto. In the recent past, I've had experienced a lot of really itchy outer ear and earlobes. I repeatedly massage them in a downward movement, including the earlobes, every time I feel my ears reacting. They seem to need a pulling down movement. Yesterday, I saw a Qigong master on YouTube doing the same massage techniques on his ears, but there was no explanation as to why this occurred. Then I remembered seeing some of the icons from your DVD, Symbolic Meanings of Ancient Icons, from your Eastern travels, who had elongated earlobes. I don't, and she also says, no, I didn't think of balancing above the ears. I was much too focused on the drama. That's okay. Don't worry about that. That's really interesting. Some of these things that actually do happen that are a bit unusual have happened to others all through time, I guess you could say. As you all realize, the throat center itself has a lot of territory that it's kind of in charge of, including the mouth and the ears. And that throat center is also included in the root gonad and solar plexus structure. So what happens with those ears is when they become itchy, it may be, depending on the individual, the temples are coming on a little bit stronger. And that means it is relating to a center behind the neck. You can call it, some people call it the ultra major, but others realize that there is a number of small centers that move into another state past the head. And of course, at the same time, move around and into the brow. And strangely enough, when they're moving around a bit, they stimulate these two minor centers, important centers, right here at the temples, and they go out about this much in these sides, about 6 or 8 inches. And it also moves to stimulate the brow center, and the brow center moves up this way into the top of the head, crown center, and also can do the same thing in the back. So you can see that it's a little bit complicated. And involved with that, of course, is movement towards the solar plexus, root, and gonad center, which, by the way, begins to be stretched so that the individual's personality can begin to handle energy coming in from a different state. And you keep this in mind in relationship to attempting to understand that these upper centers and the lower centers are attempting to be connected together in ways that will be supportive of broadening a personality's view of things ultimately, but that has to work through us as well as an individual. And we have tendencies not to want to shift our views very well, which is part of the whole process. It includes the whole of the world, actually, all the people involved. So manipulating those ears when they're itchy, you begin to move those ears, and you start, if you have taken a look at some of the acupuncture backgrounds in a book or acupressure, there are many little links up in the ears that relate to having channels of energy moving through the system, which are not only related to the ears, but related to the whole of the body, based on the intensity that moves through us to relate to engaging with the world. This, of course, is a must, otherwise we wouldn't be able to engage with the world at all. And we wouldn't even consider it worthwhile engaging with the world. So, in the old traditions, though, and I must admit, not only in older traditions, but in, let's say, traditional ways of seeing so-called spirituality, in the old way of looking at it, if you had long earlobes, you were more spiritual than other people with short earlobes, which is not necessarily true at all. However, but if you happen to have long earlobes, then you have long earlobes. Sorry about that. Doesn't mean you're necessarily spiritual. You engage with the world the same as another person who has shorter earlobes. Those engaged shorter earlobes can belong to a person who's quite spiritual. You see, belief systems seem to take over. And we have a carload of them in our world, and it's fine. Not necessarily true all the time, but there's a carload of them. And when you're looking at some of these things, it kind of supports the comfort of a personality. And you realize that everyone on the planet is vulnerable to some degree. Whether you think you are or not, you still are. The more defensive and intense that you can be in holding a position within your personality's way of seeing things means you are protecting against a tremendous level of vulnerability, which you hold on the inside, not knowing. You're not conscious of it. Is that okay? Well, yeah, it has to be for each and every one of us relative to our vulnerability. But in the way of looking at it from a personality's point of view, it's like setting up something that would make you feel more valuable. And in fact, that's what's happened with, especially with the ear things. So what am I saying? Short earlobes or long earlobes, you may or may not be spiritual. However, there are tiny little areas in the ear that might be helpful to have energy running through them for the purpose of feeling better in your physical body, emotional system. No negativity attached to this. It's just some of the things that people have learned might be helpful in China or some of the Eastern countries. But also, in the Eastern countries, some people do believe that if you have long earlobes, then you are automatically more spiritual than those with let's say, smaller ones. We have all kinds of ideas that come up like this. one of the most important things I believe is to experience things that may not necessarily align, but could align with ideas and concepts that are out there. So experientially engaging with our existence is a relationship with understanding a little deeper. It's also sometimes, if you have certain kinds of experiences, you may think that you better not tell anybody simply because people will think you're a little strange. Well, that happens too. And sometimes we are a little strange, and sometimes we're not. Hope this helps a little bit, Doris. There is another. How does that energetic intensity tie together with the upper and lower chakras, or lower? Upper and lower chakras. Well, I just talked a little bit about that. The personality's orientation is primarily related to so-called lower chakras and their link-ups with upper ones. Yeah, they're link-ups. You have to include that with upper ones, because the propensity that we have as we grow is naturally and normally to think that somehow our personality is more superior than others. You can see how silly that sounds sometimes, but you can't when you're involved with it and you're vulnerable, and you need to have that concept be involved with your thought process at the time. So, and I know we did talk, we have been talking, Doris and I, but since you sent this in and it arrived kind of a little later than we thought it might, here it is, and so we talk about it again. So here's another question, and this one is from Carol Martin. Okay, I think I'll just start reading it from here. Leaving aside whether we are human types, there are human types elsewhere in the universe, I wonder why there are humans on Earth. Ask anybody. We don't really know. But there are. This is related to my previous questions about whether humans, being so entrenched in their habits, are of dubious help to higher purposes. That's a different question. In our relation, if you read a good book on anthropology, it might help you in some ways, unless you have a belief system that doesn't agree with any of that stuff. And then you have to make up your own relationship, your own beliefs about that. And there are many beliefs around why and how come human beings are on this planet. I don't focus on them too much because there's no way of being exceedingly sure about any response. Although there are proposals about why that might be true. And so take a look at them and pick one, and then pick another one, and then pick another one, and see if any of them make you feel comfortable. But here, this is related to my previous question about whether humans being so entrenched in their habits are of dubious help. Now, if you can remember that sometimes we get things upside down in our world, namely, we see things from our perspective, the one that usually is engaged with the personality that we have and our trainings, background, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter, and also our reading and the thoughts that occupy us when we watch other people operating. And perhaps, if we're fortunate enough, to build a gap wide enough to allow yourself to be honest enough with reading how you operate with other people. That is a little bit more difficult because we tend to protect ourselves around our sense of worth, our sense of value. No matter how much I talk about this one, it will always be not necessarily understood as valuable because it will go up against, in a kind of a way, not really though, but kind of a way, up against the personalizations that any one of us come up with about how the world is seen by you. And by you, I'm not talking about Carol or Lee, I'm talking about you, the many hundreds or millions or billions of people engage with that world and realize that that is the only way to engage because it happens to be their way. It's not necessarily as real as what we believe. So, when you're looking at higher purpose, we have something upside down, from my perspective. It is often believed that our relationship with these planes is basically a dud. This is a terrible plane. Blah, blah, blah. Well, it's a plane that may be at the level of early going in development, even though our historical past, one could say, we had much more earlier going that was even not as, let's say, not the same kind of capacity that we've cultivated over these years. We've understanding better atoms, the cell, how it functions. We've looked into the cell, not only with small microscopes, one could say, but with electron microscopes, and now atomic microscopes. And we see beyond what we could ever see in the 17th, 18th century. And we have munitions that are really tremendous, and we take great pride in our nationality. We even downgrade others, which is basically nonsense. But nonetheless, it's my opinion. Because we are all human. And each one of us has the inner potential of reminding ourselves of experientially as well as mentally or emotionally of the existence of a state that is different than how some of us act in our day-to-day. It's a possibility. Or, in other people's view, it may not be a possibility. Maybe it's all, one could say, like the movies. You contract and grab images and express them in a certain way that makes you feel valued because somehow you're better, you have something that might present better. Well, no matter how much better you present, there's always better. And there's always curiosity about what else could there be? Why am I held here so much? All right. Especially when you're considering the possibility of constructing kind of a viewfinder as an option. to perceive and watch, honestly as you can, how you function, you, no one else, you function in your day-to-day, not only the good things classified by you, but not so good classified by you. Not only thinking that other people are ridiculous, realizing that saying that is ridiculous. Yeah. Or not. But you're constructing a viewfinder. You're looking into how you function from time to time. You can't do it 24 hours a day. We're not built for that yet. Can't recognize it. And then beginning to understand that in the viewfinder, you can perceive you inside of you and how you are following often much conditioning or ways that you have set up in your mind that are valuable to you, how you should act physically, how you should act emotionally, how you should be mentally, and no one else from your point of view can tell the difference between how you are when you're presenting, and you can't tell the difference sometimes between what you're doing and why you're doing it, and your proposition to others about the value of you. Well, look at it. So what? This is how everybody is. So what? Well, if someone was directive, had a directive in your direction saying, you're like this, good question to ask is, I wonder why I come across like that, because I don't feel like I am. This might be an interesting question for you. Is it because you're self-protective, like everybody else? Is it because you are hiding? Or because, from yourself, I mean, or is it because you act that way because you get a credible response within you that relates to being valued? Well, all of that stuff is only training for beginning to perceive in that viewfinder that energy operating through you for the purpose of helping others. That's higher states. These planes need the help of higher states. In the old traditional way of looking at it, in the East, it was, I can't get out of here fast enough. Once I get into that energy thing, then now I'm not coming back. That was one of the traditions. It still is, by the way. Another tradition is once I reach into a higher state, then I don't have to come back. There's no need for me to come back because I'm not necessary. I don't have to belittle myself by coming back in some way. And this goes in terms of belief systems as well as an honest interaction with recognizing that flow of that higher state 24/7, let's say. So this is a very, very disconcerting way to talk about that energy itself, because it's an idea to begin to recognize that our level of function on these planes is exceedingly youthful. And so we use the routines of the movies. We act in certain ways. These actions are believed by us. Others who have attained any kind of level of higher state engagement and may be here for the purpose of helping, see that that's an act. They don't call it any kind of negative. They call it, that's where they are now. And that's where they can only allow themselves to be. But one thing, they may have an interest, a hope, a will even from time to time to gain access to an opening within them that will allow them to perceive a relationship with a higher state that lies within us already. I would call that life force, call it whatever you want. A sense of loving that can be spoken about by any personality when they feel comforted and comfortable with how they act out in life. Doesn't mean it has to be a nice one or a good one. It can be whatever it is. They use that sense of self-loving for the purpose of allowing themselves to feel good about themselves. And sometimes that can not be very helpful, but sometimes it can be helpful in various situations where their vulnerability is so strong and they're desperate to feel more comforted. I see that as a piece and a part of every human being on this plane. It's not, you may say to me, but Ron, that doesn't look very nice. Fortunately for us, we don't notice that stuff. It's not within our purview. It's only, we're not able to see that. We're only able to see the value of what we believe must be the way that things should occur. And this is not a narrow way to see something. It's the only way we have to see something, unless we bring in and indulge in our belief system and include ourselves as a participant as more valuable than others. That's another way. And there's incremental ways all the way through from so you would say maybe the lowest to the highest idea of value. Our dilemma with this stuff is we believe it. It's not as believable when you start understanding through this viewfinder of you that you're creating. And suddenly, all of the old traditional ways of your conditioning starts speaking forward about how you are and how you aren't and how you should be and why you aren't that and besides, on and on and on. In fact, you can get to the point where you say just something simple and say, yeah, I have that in me sometimes. Maybe I can soften it down a little. Maybe if I consider the possibility that there is possible help with that, I can ask for it. I can think of myself as an energy being as opposed to a stiff or reified personality style. And since it's the only one I know, it's the only one I can use. Well, if it is the only one you know, and most of us, it is the only one we know, then go slowly. Too much awareness will help you to see things you're not quite willing to allow because you will judge yourself. And there's no judgment in this. It's not valuable, whether it be judgment of others or judgment of yourself. But we are fierce in our willingness and our need to grow. So therefore, we will consider those things that will slowly allow us only to see how much we can see. And then we will slowly move beyond that, little by little, in the whole of the world. Each and every individual, 8 billion plus people. It's strange. So many. So much potential. It's been my view that these beings who are really able, and I've not been too shy about saying it, have come into this world to be helpful, meaning to help us at the core of our existence. Core of our existence is often thought of as singular, but it's not. It's the core of 8 billion people, no matter how many were here before. It's the core of what reflexes, of the responses that we have. And sometimes we have, and they're not even ours. But we can't see that very well because we don't have a viewfinder that's willing to allow that to be in existence without making ourselves too nervous. But as that viewfinder gets, in other words, as you're able to perceive slowly and gently and respectfully and kindly how we function, it enables us to begin to allow ourselves to recognize that sometimes when we react, inside of us, there's no reaction whatsoever. It's just an expression. And we begin to wonder where that came from. And sometimes we can talk about that a lot more. I think this is difficult for us to allow ourselves to understand that level. But there are many people inquiring, and one day there will be other belief systems that will engage with that because that's their experience. It's not a makeup. It's experiential. I'll go on with the question. I hope that covers it a little bit. So the lowest person can be very helpful if they gain access to a different level within them. And so can the other ones who aren't, from your perspective, whoever you are, the lowest. Sometimes you don't understand that some of the workings of a being who is not very well equipped on the personality level can be quite helpful in enabling others because that flow can operate through them and they're not afraid to be found out within themselves, by themselves, how they are. Interesting thing. Fear is profoundly strong. Our images, so strong. And if those images aren't perfect in some way relative to us, everyone has difficulty with this. Then you feel vulnerable. I recently watched, Carol says, Gaia programming on TV. This series is about the mystery teachings and hermetics related to quantum physics. Another idea, another theory, which may bring forward some ideas. Teresa Bullard, PhD physics, mystery school teacher, see the definition, reminds us of the contextual aspects of the quantum paradigm, new paradigm. It's been going around for a while. Our measurements alter the state of the object. We have an impact on that which we are working with. Same is true with other personalities. Consider the impact you're having on others. Another way to say this, consider the impact they're having on you. Well, that part you're tuned to. You'll come up with ideas about it. Your engagement with them, different story. If you have an idea within yourself and you're smiley, and you're engaging, the idea within yourself is the part that is transmitting. So, growing has a kind of responsibility which is uncomfortable if you really think about it. Can't hide that stuff. It's energetic in nature. Our observations are based on our assumptions, so we likely see our theory out of the sea of possibilities. Absolutely. Bullard asks, did we choose to come into a physical state so we can observe ourselves? I'm sure this question is not novel to her, but it seems related to my query. Bullard says that by observation we bestow meaning in our lives. I could say that might have a real, there might be some reality in that. Also, if you observe yourself, you will bring a different meaning into your life than you already have. This is very important to understand. Unless you hold dear to you what you already think and maintain that, and then you are not really observing yourself. It's the way of what we do. It's how we function. Bullard also says meditation is the means to see into the gaps and possibly help, I'm not sure she said that, but possibly help a human paradigm shift to be more spiritual. I would agree with that. Certainly, that would be helpful. Meditation has always been a method of constructing an area within you, within the construct that you call you, so that you can see into it and observe how you are functioning. Meditation is that form. Attempt to be as aware as you can for as long as you can. As you deepen, you may not be able to hold your awareness very much. Let that be. When you're coming out so that you're slowly aware of the fact you've drifted off, start doing the pump. Just nice and easy, so slow that hardly anybody would ever know you're doing it, because what you're doing there is attempting to maintain a conscious level, not only on this plane, but slightly off of this plane. And you can develop that more and more so that it can help you build a whole area of perceiving, like a viewfinder, a microscope almost, where you can do that on other levels as well as this one, but also cultivating this one as well. So you're looking at that place within yourself, which is all of you related to energy, noting where energy is and coming in and engaging and watching it flow through, not because of you, but because of its engagement with where it needs to go to be helpful to another. We have a hard time with that. And basically, we have a hard time because we're insisting most of the times that we're the only expression flow that can operate as a personality in us. In fact, we have much to learn in this one. May not be as true as you believe. Lee has a question related to the coming to observe ourselves above. Okay. Does this mean that the self already exists? It's a difficult one. Thanks a lot, Lee. But possibly so. But not as we see us. As perception, as that's cultivated more within ourselves, there can be perception on other planes or perception in these planes of other planes. Because remember, it's this plane that needs the help. And higher states have an interest in helping these planes, as well as enabling you to grow on other planes as well. I hope that helps a little bit. How are we doing? Okay, just about 5 more minutes. This is a question from Chantal Robineau from just outside of Montreal, if I have this right. And she says, I am a beginner and just started to meditate 2 years ago. Okay. I'm wondering why I am so attracted to meditation, and at the same time trying to meditate regularly to understand myself a bit better. It probably lies within you somewhere that meditation is a way of sensing higher states in this body. And some folks have this in them. Some folks have within them the need they have to remain the way they've constructed themselves. I think both of those things are what lies on these planes. And many other views and angles to this kind of a thing. You're very fortunate in this case, Chantal, that you have a pull to meditate. Continue to do so the best you can. And keep in mind that you're attempting to be open to understanding you deeper and others deeper as well. Because others, no matter how they appear to you, they have a quality within them that needs nurturing and maybe the help that anyone can give would be important. That help meaning just being open enough to allow that flow to operate in a manner that might be helpful to some. I wish you well with that. I think, how are we doing? We could try this one. This is from Susan Hardy. I think, so I might have talked a little bit about this on the weekend. I think I mentioned that you might have a question regarding this, but nonetheless, I didn't come to the question. But here's coming to the question. So I wish you well with this. My question is about what you refer to as seeing yourself inside. I think we've just been talking about it, and the question has come up quite a bit. I am not sure what that is exactly. Feeling energy may be part of it, and seeing a lightning, and some people are seeing a lightning, and some people are like on what some people are like on a screen, not communicating with me, but inside.
Could you reread that?
It's very difficult. Sorry, Susan. Let's see, probably images I create and practice or something. I think what you're asking here, first of all, is seeing yourself inside and what that means, number one. What I'm talking actually about is attempting to cultivate a willingness to allow yourself not to be perfect who you are, but just not to be imperfect either. But just be willing to allow yourself to observe from time to time, again, little at a time, how you're interacting and why you interacted that way. Just creating a little bit of a bubble or a viewer. You have to see that from your perspective so that you can say, that's interesting. Why did I react that way? Okay, maybe I don't need to react as strongly as I did. But maybe I've practiced doing that. Have I done that? Oh, it's possible. From time to time, I do those things. That's fine. You're learning about yourself. Another person might say, yeah, but anytime I react like that, other people deserve it. Or anytime I react like that, I have this sense of comfort inside of me, of value. I value myself because I'm sticking up for myself or whatever it may be. Find out why the need is there. Look at your belief system. Is it as perfect as you believe that it is? Most people think it is. You can begin to be a person that allows you to think that it may not be. If you do that, then you're inquiring, less defensive, more inquiring, more leaning on the background that you have cultivated over the years, more suggestive to yourself, of course, not anybody else, and curious about why you would do this thing. You'll learn a little bit about yourself. Try not to look at it from any kind of a negative point of view. It's not necessary. Just attempting to understand better. Gentle it the best you can. All you're trying to do is understand you. Now, look, everybody else is not going to do this. So you'll hit a wall sometimes and you'll say things like, not you, but others. I'm talking to everybody. If nobody else is going to do it, why should I? Well, the reason why you should, or it might make sense to you, or it could be allowed on your part, is to understand that you're building a way of perceiving that can allow more awareness to come in because you're interested in being aware and attempting honestly to understand not only others, but you, and not only you, but others. It will have an effect on the image that you've constructed. It really will. And some of this, in Susan's part, she's already doing, that I know to be true. But it's difficult to do. So you're looking to find a different perspective beyond stopping your growing as you become an adult. Beyond stopping your growing as you become an adult. Most folks have stopped their growing and spend a good part of their time defending against anything that would consider, that would maybe allow a person to consider something else as viable. This is not so simple, very complicated. Okay. But why do that? Why? Because it will help you to see and understand others better. as you understand yourself better. As you gentle yourself, you'll understand that others can't do very much other than what they're doing because they're feeling so vulnerable. Often people who defend themselves can't see they're defending themselves. They already have an image set up that is so difficult to penetrate that it's like a precursor to engaging with anyone else. The same can be true when you consider yourself spiritual. I'm sorry, I have to bring this up. You may consider yourself spiritualized according to your understanding and your belief. And to some degree, you could be. But to the degree that the image is so strong from your perspective, doesn't mean you are. It means you're still involved with increments of growth. But what about the person who's just relaxing and knows they've been aware of stuff and are growing? What about them? You mean they're more superior? No. They will have recognized, perhaps, that there's more to growing than even where they are right now, right this second, even at a higher state. This is hard to take in. And it's really difficult to notice, especially when the need is so great to protect the way you think you have lived life and have reached a pinnacle of worth in something, anything. I don't care what it is. Anyway, that's all part of the same question, which is really a very pervasive question, very valuable. So what I would suggest is just take it in small pieces. Do what you can. Back away a little bit. Be curious, wonder, go do something else. It's little at a time. It's not like the goals that we set up. Let's go to work and study at the university, which many of us have. Let's get decent marks, get through postgrad work. Let's do whatever we need to do. And now we're valued. You are. It hasn't got anything to do with your inner growing, but it does. You're practicing the will to go beyond yourself. The will to engage with something that can move you beyond where you believe you need to be respected. Because that respect is really important for us. Because we are so vulnerable. And you work hard. A person who is working and spending tremendous time trying to understand anything, whether it be mental, emotional, or physical, constructing things. So you're working hard, trying to bring things together. It's all preparation. This is what I'm doing. And when I do this, I get exceptionally tired under these circumstances. Wow, so I realize I can only do this much. Okay, I got it. I can only do this much. Let me stretch it just a little bit to see if I can actually do something beyond that. My God, I can. How come I feel inside I can't? Well, there are many factors. Ask yourself that question. There are many factors. And why should I do this? And why am I even thinking this way? And, all of these questions are questions relating to discovery, exploration. And when you're involved with the experience of an engagement with a higher state, do it gently. Don't hold it high, don't hold it low. It's like checking out a living room in a house you've never been in. It's a living room, for heaven's sake. It's growing, for heaven's sake. Notice it. Be okay with it. Notice what you can. You will miss things. Some people say, no, I would never miss anything. Well, yeah, well, okay. Well, if that's where your restraint is, that's fine. But you will miss things. We all miss things in our engagement with what we believe has to be true. We grow piece by piece, little by little. Be okay with that. But continue. Continue. Do the best you can. It's what the rest of us are attempting to do, the best we can. Please take care, everybody. We're now going to meditate, and we'll just move this visual screen off. There we go. And there we go. And soon we'll have some music. And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding on your own, and have a good evening.